Alright, so here is a Philco. It's obviously a Philco chassis. Philco 38-5. This is a chassis out of a console radio from 1938. And this is a Philco 38-5. They made a tabletop version and a console version. This is out of a console, which would be the 38.5. I believe it's X, is an X-ray. Anyway, customer brought this in to me to get restored. What I can tell, it's pretty much all original, everything except the tubes. It looks like people have changed the tubes over the years, but looking underneath it, it's still just the original filter caps are still connected to the bottom of it. Alright, and here's the speaker that goes with this chassis here. It's the original Philco speaker with a field coil and the looks like the audio output transformer mounted to the bottom of it. Typical speaker from the 30s. Looks like about a 10-inch speaker, and the cone on this thing is not perfect. It looks like there's a boo-boo in it right there. I noted that when he dropped it off. But anyway, this thing's pretty much all original. It looks pretty faded in here, the dial on this thing. But this receives the standard AM broadcast band from 550 up to 1700, which is actually the police band back in the day. But now it's pretty much just the AM broadcast band. And then it's shortwave from 5.6 to what looks like 19 megahertz. And so I would say this would probably been a mid-range set for that time period. Alright, and here's the console version of this radio. Original selling price was $89.95 in June of 1937. 10,495 of these radios were made. And I mentioned that there was a version of this set. This is a picture of it right here. This is the 38-5 or 38.5B, as in Bravo. And there were about 6,000 of these sets made, so these are more rare than the console versions. And this set uses 8 tubes. The tube lineup is as follows: a 5U7 RF tube, a 6A8G or 6A8 for the detector and oscillator. The 6K7 is for IF, and your second detector and ABC tube is 6J5, and the first audio tube is 6K5, and then you have two 6F6 with a, has a push-pull audio output, and a 5Y3 rectifier tube, a 5Y4 rectifier tube. And here's the underside of the chassis. It's sitting on end, and everything in here looks pretty much all original. I haven't taken the liberty to take that plate off and see what's waiting on us under there, but here's one of the original filter capacitors with the electrolyte that's leaked out of the top of it. As you can see, the wiring is still hooked to it, along with ground leads over here. But yeah, I would say that one's that cap's probably bad. I think it's probably safe that we don't even need to check that one. And anyway, here is a multi-section here. Original filter capacitor there, and all of our I think all of the paper capacitors I've seen in here are still Philco. Got a bunch of these old Bakelite block capacitors, which are so much fun to rebuild, digging all the tar out of them things. And we have another capacitor here. Still has the original wiring hooked to it, although not as much physical leakage out of it. It's safe to say that we don't even need to power up the set with those connected. So the customer informed me that they did plug it in. I guess when he went to go buy it, when he went to buy this thing, he bought it at an antique store. Apparently they didn't have any idea, any electronical knowledge, or even to know that you shouldn't plug a set like this in, especially with a high voltage cord that goes out to the to the field coil in that condition, and the power cord like this. He told me that they plugged it in and sparks flew, but he said that they plugged it in and it had a 60 cycle hum, and that's obviously our filter capacitors that are bad. And you know, looking at this, there's no wonder why that was humming. Those things are complete toast, and pretty much probably all the rest of these caps are too, so they're all going to need to be changed, but we'll get to that as we go through. But first things first, I'm not even going to power this thing up. There's no sense of plugging it up or even trying to put power to it, especially with the stuff like this. This power cord isn't too bad, what's left of it. For testing purposes, I may just put one of those ends on it that you can splice on, and just use it for testing purposes until we can get it replaced. The customer brought me a new power cord. As a matter of fact, the customer brought all new parts for this thing. He was going to try to restore this himself and decided not to. I think it was a little bit above his electronical knowledge. But this is the power cord that he ordered from Mauser Electronics, and I don't know. You know, if it was me, I wouldn't put a power cord like this on a set like this. I try to keep them a little more original than that, but you know, I guess I'm gonna put it on there. I mean, he brought it to me and he wants it put on there, so I'm just you know, when I work on other people's sets, you know, I do what they want to do, because they're the boss when it comes to, you know, when it comes to this stuff. It's their set. They can, if they want it that way, then I'll put it on there for them. It doesn't mean I do it for myself that way, but anyway. But yeah, I think the first things first, we need to go ahead and get these caps changed on here before we even try to apply power. And I'm gonna bring this one up on a variac. I'm gonna have to do this one the right way, and make sure hopefully that our power transformer is okay. I'll have to pull the rectifier tube and do some checks on that, make sure we got high voltage on that. Alright, I got this thing powered up with 115 volts, and it's not drawing. See, it's drawing about 25.8 watts and just 0.24 amps. So that looks good. Right at 60 hertz. Okay, but we're running 115 volts into it. And there's really no excessive draw. We got our filaments are lit up, so something must be good. And we have 300 volts. That's one side of the secondary winding, and there's our other 330 volts on the other side. So this transformer appears to be good. I mean, we got our filament voltage. Yeah, there's our 5-volt filament line right there. So this transformer appears to be just fine. Well, with the power on, warmed up, I'm getting a faint signal. Very faint. But we've got a lot more work to do to this set, so at least we know it's somewhat working. Alright, so we had a little slight mishap. We had this 6K5, which is this tube. As you can see, the tube cap broke off because the adhesive had come loose, and as soon as I went to go twist that wire, it just come right off. So now we got a 6K5 tube that's junk. And I don't even know if it was any good or to start with. I couldn't even get it out of the radio. So I didn't have a 6K5, so I had to use this 6Q7 in place of it as a temporary substitute until I can get a 6K5. And these tube bases here have such a narrow opening that doesn't allow for a GT tube, which is a shorter version with a little bit wider base, that this tube socket here won't allow. So either you have to do like they did here with a 6J5 here and waller out the tube socket like they did here. Had to cut that this tube shield base to allow that bigger base to go in there, or you'll have to get a 6K5G, which is a lot harder to find. Alright, I got some sound out of it. After probing around, I realized, and looking at the schematic, I realized you have to have this shadow meter hooked up because it's got a coil right here, which is about a 1500 ohm coil that's got to be in line with it to take the power from that 6U7 tube over to the IF can. So this is actually in line with it, so without that hooked up you're not going to get any sound. Now, I've got sound now, but it's anything but clear. So we still got some work to do. Anyway, I guess I'll check some voltages and see what we come up with. Alright, a quick side note on this this dial light here. This thing has fell apart. There's some sort of black plastic crap. I guess that was the insulator that went in here to separate this, you know, light bulb in here. And there's a spring in there that came out and was all messed up. So in a junk radio, I got another light socket out, and I bend the tabs up and pull this out along with the spring that's in there, which is here. And so what I'm going to do is, you know, to keep this light diffuser original, this slides down into here and will replace the other one. So what I'm going to have to do is take this off of this wire here and splice, and we'll cut this down to so there's no I'll cut this off and then resplice it, which I may not even need to resplice it because it's already pretty much done that way, and put some heat shrink over it, run it down this wire a little ways to prevent shorting, and put this back together so I can save this light assembly and keep all that original. Alright, I've got our bulb assembly done. There's our spring and there's our new center insulator there, so we'll just pull it back in here and install our bulb. Alright, and we now have light. Our little dial pointer, illuminated dial pointer.
Do you worry a lot? If you're forgetful, nervous, moody, or overwhelmed.
And part of the distorted audio was there was a broken wire, and I put it back together. It had come off of this terminal strip here where I had soldered that capacitor there, so I had to resolder that. And our voltages are back up to normal on here. I was only getting, well, I wasn't really getting any voltage on the plate, but now I'm getting about 240 volts on there, which is about right. It seems a little high, but it's definitely back up there where it's supposed to be, at least. A lot of these components are out of tolerance, so you're going to have voltages that are a little off too. Alright, I don't know if you can see that, but the inside, that contact has pushed all the way down into the black insulator, which is completely crumbled. This is on our shadow meter. So I'm going to have to take this one apart and do the same thing to it. So the insulators and these wires, where this goes through the back up here, and that hole there is just, it turns to black mush. And it's just this brittle, hard material that's probably rubber that's disintegrated. Alright, so I got our wire fed through and our spring is down in there. And this is our new insulator, and I just need to chop off this excess piece of wire here and push it down in there, and we should be good to go. And we have light. Our shadow meter is now working. Alright, so back on this Philco. I've been gone for several days out of town. We had a family member pass away, and so I had to go down to well, out of state, we'll just say that, and take care of some funeral arrangements. And so anyway, I'm back. Alright, so we got it playing, and that's 970 there. Sounds pretty good. I had to patch the speaker here because there were some holes in it. And there was a slight hole up in here, so I patched that. I just took an old speaker cone and cut it out, and took some rubber cement there and just, you know, put a little light coat on it and just stuck it on there and let it dry. I actually got it patched on the underside too. Patch there. So, but it sounds pretty good, so I figure I'd do that to save the customer from having to get it reconed. That usually can get pricey. So I'm just gonna continue to work under the chassis now that I've got all the lights and everything running on it. I'm gonna continue to work under the chassis and replace some, you know, some more components that need to go, and we'll just keep working from there. Alright, so here comes the funnest part of all working on this thing. Is we're going to try to start rebuilding some of these Bakelite block capacitors. I'm going to start with this one, this across the line cap, which comes in from this old ratty power cord, which I'm going to change to a the customer requested that I put in a grounded power plug. I've got one over here that should fit through this hole without a problem, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to rebuild this block capacitor, which is 2.015 microfarad capacitors. Basically you have a capacitor here and a capacitor here, and they're both shunted to ground, which is here, going straight to the chassis. So What this involves doing is pulling this screw out here. This is the way I do it. I don't take these things all the way out if I can help it. This has got some tar in it that you got to remove, and that's why I say it's fun, because it's very messy, and I've got to do that. I've gotten most of the paper capacitors out. I've still got this one here, and then one to the antenna, which is not a big deal. Those are not super critical caps. We'll get those changed, but I'm going to go ahead and get started on these block capacitors. So basically on this one, what I want to do, should be a fairly easy one to do. I just need to remove this screw here, and I'm going to flip it over, and then what I usually do on these is take a heat gun and heat up the the tar in there, and it gets it broken loose from this Bakelite block part, and then I just take and dig it out, and then I'll remove the old capacitors and install new ones. And then I just and our new capacitors are going to be in here. It's going to be the little yellow capacitors, which should fit in there just fine. Whatever kind of capacitor you have, as long as it fits in here and it's a correct value, including the voltage, it should work just fine. And I just put them in here and wire them up like the originals, and I don't bother putting the tar back in there. There's no real reason for that to go back in there. I just put it in the trash and try not to get my floor too filled up with that gummy crap. It gets everywhere. Alright, and you just remove this quarter screw with a nut driver, and it comes out. And what I do is I just pull them out, flip them over, and there's your gummy, gooey crap you got to get out right there. Like I said, I take a heat gun and heat up around here, and then it'll start to melt this stuff away from the Bakelite, and then I just dig it out. And when you make sure when you put back in there, you don't forget to put your star washer back in there and make sure it's grounded good. Now, I'm only going to show this on this capacitor just for illustration purposes. We're just going to use this capacitor to show you what I'm doing here, because all the rest of them it would take. I'm not going to put that in the video. It's going to make it too long, but this is going to be a good example of what you need to do. The star washer goes on the bottom. You can see where it bit down into the original, into the metal there. So what I do is just take a heat gun and heat this up. Alright, I ran out of memory space. I had to delete some stuff off here. Anyway, you just basically heat this up until this black stuff starts to melt down, and it looks pretty shiny. You can pretty much tell when it starts to separate. Alright, so here's the finished product. I had to delete some more stuff off this card. It was it's amazing how much they want you to delete off of it before it'll even work again. I didn't, whatever, anyway. So that's the capacitor removed, and this is the pretty big chunk of capacitors that's inside of it. Basically paper capacitors in a tar substance to, I guess, keep them from breaking down. So anyway, this is that tarry stuff, and it'll pretty much come out in one big chunk if you can grab it in the right way. Just don't pry on these edges too hard or it'll break the Bakelite. So now what I'll need to do is remove these leads here and just solder a capacitor back in place of it. Alright, and here's our finished product. We got two 0.105 microfarad caps in there. Both of them shunted to ground, which is our ground lead here. What I do is I poke the leads through here. I clear the holes out of solder and poke the leads through and wrap them. Poke them through, wrap them, and solder them up. And we'll mount that right back in place. And no need to, most of the time you don't have to disconnect the wires, but sometimes you do, because the components off of them, like these capacitors or something, if they limit its movement or something like that and you risk breaking the component, you're better off just to remove that particular component. But if it's just got wires on it, you're probably good to go, as long as you don't twist them and bend them too many times. Alright, so I got all of our Bakelite block capacitors redone, and like I said, I just run them through the hole and wrap them just like they are from the factory. Obviously the lead's a little thicker than the factory ones, but it works just fine. And you know, the bottom being hollow, you'll never see it, and looks just like the original equipment. These things always reminded me, I think this lens is fogging up, but this stuff always reminded me of terminal strips and a capacitor combination is basically all it is. Alright, so the next thing is I need to replace some of this old ratty wiring in here, and this is going to be a little bit of a project to try to make sure, you know, each connection goes back to its correct corresponding location. This lens keeps fogging up because it's cold in here this morning, and I just turned the heat on, and there you have it. Alright, so what I think I'm going to do, I use that like my heater, and so what I think I'm going to end up doing here is just drawing I could go by the factory schematic, but it's kind of vague, so I think what I'm going to do is draw my own wiring diagram so I know where each thing ends up going, so I can put it back right. This lens is fogging up again. Alright, we got all that ratty wire replaced. And got it going into a got some heat shrink over it and going into a grommet. It was just bare metal there before from the factory, so you know, put a grommet inside that hole there, and then put some heat shrink on it so you won't have any of that chafing issue. And twisted and wrapped it just like it was, and just modern wire is the only difference. So I usually try to keep some of this reproduction cloth wrap wire in stock, but I only have that one color, so we'll have to go with this. It is definitely far better than what the factory made, but it seems to play pretty good, and I can't let this play too long or I'm gonna get hammered from copyright police. Alright, I just want to note, I don't know if you can see this, but right in here there's two resistors inside this IF can, and one of them is a 330, the other one is a 50 ohm or 50k ohm, and this is a 330k ohm. And I just went through and checked them, and they look good. But in order to get this out of the IF can, you have to take these little spinner nuts off the back right here, down where your adjustment's at for your variable capacitor in there, and then you know, you push it down and it slides out the bottom. This can comes off. Alright, so we got the first IF can out, and there's no resistors in here, just some variable inductors and these preset capacitors in here. So nothing really much in here to mess with. You have to take it out to change your wire to your tube cap. It's basically the same as the other one. You remove these nuts, which are screwed onto these variable inductors here. And it's a good idea to put a screwdriver on here and hold that while you turn it so it don't get out of adjustment. But I'm going to have to recalibrate this or realign this radio anyway, so it's not a big deal. Alright, so I'm going to check the tubes in this Philco. We're back on the Philco here. I'm going to start checking the tubes on this thing and see how good they are. This is the 6J5, which is the second detector and the ABC tube. And it's a little weak, about 460 or so, 440, climbing up to almost 460 there. It's a little on the weak side there, so we'll see what we got around here in my junk and see if I can put one in. If I got one to put one in. Alright, here's a 6J5, a Ward's airline I found in my junk tube stash box, and it checks a lot better. It's about 680, so this one the best one I found so far. I found a metal tube, a CBS tube, and it was coming in a little over 600, but this one's a little better, so we'll go with this one here. Alright, so this is the 6K7, which is our IF tube, and let it warm up a while, and it's good, but it's kind of weakish, I guess you should say. It's coming in almost 620, I guess, so it's good. I think I've got one that's stronger, but I don't know. I noticed the short wave on this thing is a little deaf, so I don't know if this will help anything or not. But anyway, we'll go with this one for now, and if I need to swap them, I'll do it later. And just for reference, the one out of my stash, it checks about 750. So it's definitely a little bit better tube. Alright, here is the 6A8, which is our first detector tube. And it's very marginal. Comes in at about 580, 590, something like that. Just barely in the green. Alright, and this is a 6U7, which is used as the RF amplifier tube in this set. And it checks about 650. So it's not too bad. Alright, so here's our 6F6, which is one of our audio output tubes. This has a push-pull, so it has two. And looks like it checking in at about 750. Not too bad. That's an original Philco tube. And here's our other 6F6 tube. This is a GT. And it's got several crack places on the base here that looks pretty bad, but we'll see how it checks. Oh yeah, this thing is dead. Yep, well, don't have to worry about that crack base anymore. It's garbage. And junk box to the rescue again. We have a 6F6 that checks pretty strong. Looks like about 760, so not bad at all. And here's our 5Y4 rectifier tube, checking in way over at about 860. Not bad. Alright, so we got our 6K5 tube in the mail today, and so I've got it all hooked up, and so we can put this thing back in the set. But I want to check it before I put it back in the set, make sure I didn't get a bad tube or something from an online seller. So it looks like it's fine. It's a little over 700. And this is a Philco tube. It's pretty much the same tube that came out of it, that the cap snapped off the top, and then of course the wire broke off at the glass, so it was pretty much a goner even if it was a good tube. But well, this one's good, so we'll put it in the set. Alright, with our signal generator over here set to 470, which is what this one is. It's a 470 kilocycle IF, so we're supposed to go to the grid of this tube here and the 6A8, and then adjust top, bottom, and then go over here to second IF tube here and adjust bottom, top. That's the way the instructions tell you to do it. So that's what we're going to do. And then to set the short wave, you've got to do something else. Okay, so the second for the short wave band is just aligning the dial. You're supposed to set it to 18, which is set there, and then it's set to the generator, and then you just line it up using that compensator there, that nut right there. Then you line that up, and then you're going to do the same for the AM with these two here. Alright, so I had no reception on short wave and couldn't figure out what it was. And come to find out, there was a bunch of little bent pins, and on the wafer switch on the band switch wasn't allowing the antenna signal to come through. So now we have it working, and we have a shortwave station playing heart. That's kind of strange. But I was wondering why this thing was deaf and wasn't picking up any shortwave.
I went and I tried to lift the blanket. Now what's this? Labrador in 1981. This exploration party travelled to Martin Bay, sailing
Picking them up on multiple frequencies.
started again. Suddenly, as the Spirit of the Lord came upon
Seems to be working pretty good after that alignment.
L'observation stricte des objectifs et des principes de la Charte des Nations Unies et du droit international, la solution pacifique de différends, l'interdiction de l'usage et de l'usage.
Son nombres, pero lo que está claro que acá lo importante es el club, el equipo y obviamente.
Alright, back to the regular broadcast. Got some DX coming in. It's not even fully dark outside yet. It's only 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but I'm getting DX.
probably in about 5.
Backed up by text messages. When Bloom found
Well, this one gets the full AM band because it goes all the way to 1700, so that's good. And what was used to be the old police band.
and I hate to.
Last week they beat Tennessee at home in another game, but they probably
So picking up some music. Got a lot of this electrical buzz. I don't know exactly where it's coming from. It's on a very small part of the dial, just right in here. But there's DX coming in, but it's like not fully in yet, so I don't recognize. Oh, that's 970, that's right. I'm picking up some here and there around the dial, but mainly all the locals are coming in pretty good. So
With the new offer of $100,000.
all right, we're gonna get this pretty much. This pretty much wraps this one up. We're gonna go ahead and get it back to the customer. One thing I do want to note: these grommets here are rubber, and they're just about completely gone. I made this one out of a piece of rubber. Comes out down and then comes out sort of like a sideways in, I guess I should say. But anyway, I made that piece of rubber, and it'll insulate that tuner and stop it from wobbling around. The ones on the front are still pretty fried. I don't know if you can see it down in there or not, but that's it right there. But it's got a lot of hardened rubber on it, but those aren't broke all the way off yet. And I don't know any place you can get replacements for those. If anybody out there knows, let me know. But I just made this one here out of a piece of rubber, and so that should work, and it'll keep that tuner from grounding out and flopping around and all that. And we got them some new rubber feet here all the way around it. These new little rubber feet, you can get them places like Radio Days has them. I think they're like $9 or like for a bag of them, so not too bad. But anyway, this is gonna wrap it up. Thanks for watching.